Lovely to talk with you this morning. My name's Kieran. I'm on the staff here, one of the church pastors. How did that happen? I'm an associate pastor. And Tim, who was leading us just now, and Tim, what's your title? It's executive pastor, so Tim is super important. Jim, who normally speaks here on a Sunday, is senior pastor. So normally what I do, I'll get a little message coming through my phone. Jim will say, come into my office. I go into his office and he would say, hold my Bible for me, and I have to kneel in front of him like this with the Bible open whilst he reads it. So that's the role of an associate pastor. So some of you watching online, I don't know if you're aware of this, hi to you if you're on YouTube watching this live or recorded. We have scores and scores of people that for whatever reason, they can't make it on a Sunday. Some of you have been at work and you're catching up on this. Some of you just enjoy bed, let's face it, and some people who've got health issues. But one of the wonderful things is we have lots of people that are thinking, I wonder if there might be something in this message about Jesus, and they tune in. So right now, I said I'd do this week, I help with something called the Alpha course, and on Alpha this week, I said I was going to give a shout out to my Alpha guest, so Julie, down in Devon. Big whoop for Julie. So I hope you've stopped. Last week she was saying she was practicing 90s dance music on her keyboard for some reason. So stop that now, because I want you to listen to me. And we've got people like we've got two Lornas. We've got, who else have we got? We've got Magdalena, Martina. We've got James. So guys, hi. I want to say hello to you, and all those who don't know me, and all those who don't want to know me. Actually, let's face it. So this morning, you're here, I'm here, and over these last, I think it was September, we started this series as part of what we do as a church. We always look at the Bible, and we started looking at probably one of the most famous bits of the Bible called the Sermon on the Mount. And these were the words of Jesus. He went up on a mountainside and did some amazing teaching. Even people that would not consider themselves Christians would acknowledge that the teaching of Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount was some of the most profound, remarkable teaching that's to be found in any literature and writing. But obviously, as people who are Christians, it's really important to us, the words of Jesus. So last week, starting in September, Tim Goodenough, he did an excellent talk. I recommend you listen to it. In fact, maybe if you're watching online, just stop, pause this, just go back and watch Tim's, honestly. But Tim last week, I don't know if you realize this, that was the end of the Sermon on the Mount. It's finished. It's over. He finished it last week. And as we look at Matthew chapter 7, where these words are recorded, last week Tim finished it. That was the end of Jesus' amazing teaching. But then Jesus goes on with some points for us to some action points for us to think about. He didn't want to just leave it as wow, wasn't that great teaching? He wants you and I to do something with this. So one of the things he said in Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 was this. So Tim finished it. The sermon was over last week. Well, Jesus finished the sermon rather than you finishing it. And then Jesus says this. He says, enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the way, the road, the path that leads to destruction, and many travel on it. But narrow is the gate, and the way, the road, the path. Narrow is the gate that leads to life, and few find it. So Jesus gives this exhortation, enter. So immediately he's saying, you need to do something with this. Enter through the narrow gates. For wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction. But narrow is the gate, narrow is the way, narrow is the path, narrow is the road that leads to life, and few find it. And in our modern way of thinking, I have the privilege of, what I love about my life is I spend a lot of time talking to people who just, they don't do church, and they don't know Jesus, and they're on a journey to discovering, who Jesus is. Loads of people I talk to, they've got a kind of respect for Jesus, but they say, well, really what I believe, it's kind of all the same, isn't it? You pray to your God, you've got your belief, you like Jesus. But, I believe there's many gods. I believe there's different ways, different philosophies. But really, it all kind of leads to one truth, one God, one heaven. I've spoken to people of other faiths and said, well, yeah, even, people from, well-known faiths in this country would say, well, actually, no, we believe actually it's all kind of going to the same way. But we've got to come back to the words of Jesus. And you see, what Jesus says is he says it's a narrow way. It's not wide. It's narrow. There's not many ways. It's narrow. It's a narrow gate. It's a narrow way. It's a narrow road. It's a narrow path. It isn't, and this is why I think, Christians through the years, in fact, it is why Christians through the years, and even in our generation, people are persecuted for following Jesus, because it's so politically incorrect to say, no, there are not many ways, there's only one way. Jesus said this, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one is going to come to God except through me. That is an offense, but it's 100% true. To prove it was true, Jesus was crucified on a cross. He died a criminal's death and then rose again. He astounded everybody, even his closest friends, by rising from the grave and saying, believe me, I am God, I'm alive, I give you new life. Narrow is the way, narrow is the path, narrow is the entrance, but it leads to life. It isn't all roads lead to God. And let's just be clear, when Jesus said, enter through the narrow gate, he said, broad is the gate, broad is the road that leads to destruction. Again, it's not politically correct to say, actually, there is going to be an accounting. There is going to be a judgment. Now, the reason Jesus came and died was to take that judgment so we don't have to take it. God so loved the world. That's why Jesus came. But if you want to find out what the Bible says about hell, again, this comes up on Alpha. What do you Christians believe about hell? Well, everything we know about hell really is through the words, through the lips of Jesus Christ. The people that, the same people that say, oh yeah, the teaching of Jesus is amazing. I'm not a Christian, I don't actually believe in that, but I think Jesus was amazing. Well, this same Jesus said it's a narrow way and broad is the road that leads to destruction and many are on it. And let's be clear, it isn't a choice. It's not like we're facing a choice. The choice that Jesus gives us, it's not like, well, here's one gate, there's a narrow gate, and here's a broad gate. Narrow gate, broad gate. No. Actually, what the Bible teaches is that we're all on that broad road to destruction. We've all entered through that broad gate. This isn't popular. I'm not, if you're watching online thinking, should I check it? This isn't winning you over. It'd be a lot easier not to say this. It'd be a lot easier to say all roads lead to God. Just believe what you believe. It's all right. God's a God of love, which he is. But the words of Jesus are so loving, so kind, so compassionate. And yet he's very clear. He says there's a narrow way. There's a narrow gate. And he says that few find it. Now, look, we don't want to get caught up on that. When he says there's a broad road, many are on that road, and there's a narrow way, and few find it. But you can get caught up with that. You think, oh, well, clearly that means only one or two people are going to become Christians. No, because the rest of the Bible says in the book of Revelation that there's going to be a multitude that no person could count standing before God saying, Jesus, thank you, I put my trust in you, and you've forgiven me, you've cleansed me, you've saved me, you've said, come through the narrow gate, follow me. I chose to do that. A multitude. It talks about many being saved. In fact, even the disciples in Luke's account, they said, Lord, this is hard. Does that mean only a few are going to be saved? And he said, look, don't worry about that, but enter through the narrow way. Enter through the narrow way. It's a narrow path. It's not an easy path. And when you go through the narrow gate, you might find yourself, like I have many times, stumbling and falling and getting it wrong. But the wonderful thing is, Jesus is on this path with you, and when you stumble and fall, he'll reach down, pick you up, dust you off, wipe a tear from your eye, put his arm around your shoulder, and he'll walk with you. It's a narrow way. It's a narrow path. And it's tempting to think, well, this Christian message, it's all about the broad. It's all about the wide thing. No, Jesus is so interested in individuals. He's so interested in you. He's so interested in you if you're watching online now. He loves you. He knows everything about you. He knows your mistakes, your failures, your sins, the things that trap you, the things that bring you down. And yet he came to set you free, to forgive you, to help you, to walk on that narrow path with you. And here's the entreaty he gives. I've said already, Tim last week finished the Sermon on the Mount. And now Jesus says, enter through the narrow gate. And he gives two choices, enter through the narrow gate. Wide, narrow. Narrow gate, wide gate. The next bit goes on to say, good prophet, bad prophet. Good fruits, bad fruit from a tree. People that know me, people that don't know me. People that claim to know me, but don't know me. And I'll say I don't actually know them. Know me, don't know me. Really know me or don't know me. That's the contrast. Then he goes on to say, good builder, foolish builder. Good builder, house on rock. Foolish builder, house on sand. So the sermon's finished, but now he's saying choice. This way, that way. Wide gate, narrow gate. Good fruit in your life, bad fruit in your life. Know me, don't know me. Good foundation, bad foundation. He wants you and me to do something with what we've heard. It's not intellectual kind of fodder. He wants us to respond. So today, he's saying, enter. Enter, there's an invitation. There's an invitation to you here today, if you don't know Jesus. Enter through the narrow gate. He's actually speaking to you personally, all the way through the accounts in the Gospels of Jesus meeting with people. Think about, in John chapter 4, the woman at the well. Jesus is just hungry. That's I relate to Jesus. I spend a lot of my life feeling just hungry. Jesus is hungry, he's tired, he's sitting by a well. A woman comes. You might know the story if you're familiar with the Bible. And he's interested in her. And he has a conversation with her. It's individuals. He's interested in the world, but it does come down to you. He's really interested in you and what your response to this message is today. He's saying to you, enter through the narrow gate. Continue on the path. Continue on the way. A great way of thinking about it is, I don't know if you're familiar with turnstiles. So modern turnstiles, if you go to, events and things like that, often they're like a little metal bar, and you put your ticket in or you beep your thing and you push and the bar goes over. In some ways, I think a more helpful picture is because I think, well, if I needed to, I could jump that and just run off. But a few weeks ago, Luke Stevens, Jack, and myself went with a friend to watch Plymouth Argyle play Cambridge United. So my lovely wife is from Plymouth, and we went to Cambridge United to watch them play, and it's quite an old-fashioned football ground. So look, it's not like a proper team like Liverpool. Jim, just want to honour you. Jim told me to say that. I don't actually believe it. It's an old-fashioned ground, and I remember the turnstile. It was this kind of weird turnstile that went from the floor to here, with kind of like metal bars all around it, really narrow. And you went to the ticket desk, and the guy looked at the ticket, and then you kind of had to squeeze in, and then it clunked round. And Jesus is saying, enter through the narrow turnstile. It's one at a time. There's going to be multitudes standing before God in heaven on that day when he comes and, this life is so hard for so many people, when he comes and rescues us. But there's a moment when you need to enter through that turnstile. And what I noticed about that turnstile in that old-fashioned football ground, which is why I want to use that illustration, there's no room for any luggage. You know what I mean? If you think, well, I'm going to enter, Jesus, I want to follow you, but there's all this stuff actually I want to keep hold of. Maybe you've got a suitcase full of pain and hurt from the past. And God says, do you know what? We can together, we can maybe leave some of that. Let's leave it there at the cross outside. And I'll help heal you on the journey. I know it's not an instant thing. It takes years sometimes of walking with Jesus to be healed of some of those pains that you've been through. Maybe you're so caught up with your image. Maybe you're into what you look like and who you are. And it's like a massive suitcase. And Jesus is saying, yeah, come on, come, enter through. But you're never going to get in with that. You need to put that down. Or maybe, you've got a favorite sin. In fact, let's start here. Let's go from here. Let's just call out our favorite sins. I'm going to do this and let's go round. Or I could just pick on people randomly. Joel, lovely drumming. What's your favorite sin? Call it out. Let's come over. Now, clearly, we're not going to do that. But the thing is, but God knows us and loves us in spite of these things. And he's saying, look, it's a narrow gate. You can't bring these things with you. They're not going to do you good. They're not going to help you on the path. Come on, let's leave them down. And God's so interested in people. Yesterday I was at a petrol station. And, I don't have a car. I was just hanging about, That would be weird, wouldn't it? Nice pump. And I was filling the petrol station up. I wasn't actually. I was filling the car up. We just got a little car. I love our cars that we've had recently because they're like, you put one on each foot. They're like roller skates. Those kind of small cars. I'm not into cars, but we've got a really little small car. And this amazing car pulled up. I'm filling up the car. This amazing car pulled up. So I'm not into cars. It looked like a Lamborghini, but it was an Audi. Somebody will know what that is. And it roared in next to me. And I'm filling out, and the guy got out, and he was looking really cool. He was a really cool dude, unlike me. And he got out, and I just said to him, nice car. And he smiled and said, thanks. I said, no, mine. I've got a Skoda. And, he laughed. Because I laughed, he didn't think I was being serious. It's like some called car off, And we have this conversation. You see, the thing is, Jesus is interested in you. He's interested in individuals. So here's what we do once a month, because Jim's such a fantastic... I love you, Jim. I really do. I know I joke about my colleagues, It's because I feel inferior as an associate. But one of the things Jim, Tim do as a staff team, we've got maybe 20 staff, is it? I don't know how many staff we've got. How many? 22 staff. Once a month, we have a moment. We meet to pray every week, those that can. But once a month, we have a staff time where we go into our lovely home coffee house and have a coffee. And we're there for we did it this week, didn't we? We were there for our coffee time. And everybody's there, the staff are there, they're all talking to each other because, there's some nice people. I've worked with lovely people, and they're chatting to each other and catching up. But I'm standing there waiting for the coffee, and there's a guy standing there. All the staff are talking to each other. And here's what I see. I see the man standing on his own in a motorcycle jacket. So I just said to him, I said, are you a biker? And he goes, yeah, totally into it. So sort of long hair, big sort of guy. He's got the biker jacket on, so he goes, yeah, I've got a bike. I've got a Hokey Cokey 5000 or whatever the bike was that he had. And he goes, and you don't have to pretend, like I said to the bloke with the car at the petrol station, I'm not really into cars, but that's really nice. So he goes, look, I'll show you a picture of it. So show me pictures of his motorbike and show me pictures of his last motorbike. So I'm having this conversation with him. Do you know why? Because actually Jesus sees you. He sees you. And Christ is in us, the hope of glory. So in my eyes, I see people and I think, Jesus, you want this person to know you. And somehow maybe you can use me to help them to take one step closer. So I'm talking to him about motorbikes, and then he says to me, so what sort of church is this then? But he doesn't look like a churchgoer. He's like a kind of motorcyclist, Hell's Angel-y sort of bloke. So what sort of church is this then? And I said, well, it's like any Christian church. We believe in Jesus. We honor the Bible. It's maybe more informal than some. He goes, a bit like Hillsongs then. I'm like, whoa. I said, so you got previous? He goes, yeah, I've been there. That was interesting. Because that's a great church, Hillsong. It's a brilliant church. And he goes, my girlfriend, she's a Christian. And she's trying to get me into this. So I said, oh, that's interesting. He said, but there's one thing that I keep asking and she can't answer. I said, well, that's interesting. And I said, if we would have a coffee together, I said, I'm sure I wouldn't be able to answer it. But I'd love to have a go. Would that help? He goes, I like that. And we're there. And all the staff are just talking to each other. But there's this moment where Jesus sees people. And by the way, I'm not knocking the rest of the guys for talking to each other. I'm miserable. You know, this staff meeting, I just went and sat on my own, didn't I? Yeah. But it's narrow. It's a narrow gate. And today, maybe for the first time, you need to enter through that narrow gate. You know, watching now, maybe you need to enter. How do you do that? You put your trust in Jesus and say, Jesus, I'm going to leave my baggage outside. I'm coming as I am, believing your cross, your death is enough for me to be forgiven and to know you. Your resurrection is enough to give me that new life. It's a path that leads to life. So even if this life is so hard and so tough for you, you follow Jesus on that path. He'll help you through the tough moments, and he'll take you to everlasting life. I wonder if Silent and the band will come up. Maybe that would be good. I feel a song coming on. Yeah, I can feel it. By the way, Tony, I love the way you led us out on that last song. I don't know if that was planned or not, but it was really, not to say the other stuff was great, by the way, but that was my favourite bit. So if you could do that again, that'd be brilliant. Sorry, I'm just a personal thing. I wonder if we might pray.